Welcome everyone back to another episode of Q&A with Sharon's son George. I was my mother's caregiver after she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Unfortunately, she passed on 1/1/2020, but we started TogetherForSharon.com in her memory. Today, I'm proud to say I have someone who I consider really friend and family. We've known each other for some time. It's amazing how long it took us to get together, but I'm so honored to have him. I want to welcome you, Nathan. Plus, I wore the hat just to match you because I knew you. I love,
Thanks. I'm
I
gonna have
love.
to get one of those. I like it.
No, I appreciate it. We don't sell them, but for you and your family, we'll get. But I just want to, again, maybe we could start quickly because there's so much to talk about. How did you kind of get into the world of Parkinson's awareness? I also, now I'm not able to do it, but I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. So my whole life I've kind of trained a lot of the things that you really do, which is why I admire everything you do. And really putting it to this cause means the world to so many.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, first of all. And I love to see how much you're growing, man. Your mom would be very, very proud. So where I come from into the Parkinson's world is I myself have Parkinson's. I've been living with it since before 2012. I was diagnosed officially in 2012. A lot of people have heard my story. I'll go through it briefly. I went through a lot of years of depression and apathy, not doing the things that I should for myself, the exercise that I should for myself. But I was drug out of that when my 8-year-old son joined a local karate school. And the instructors drug me out onto the mats and said, "This will help you." Though I was reluctant, I did it kind of just to show my son, like, all right, your dad's gonna at least try. But I was skeptical. But as you know, the martial arts have a lot of beauty to them that most folks don't really see just on glance. But after about 3 months, I dropped my cane. Didn't have quite as many falls as I was having. I didn't have the same freezing episodes that I was dealing with. Um, I can go through, of course, through the conversation of what I believe is happened there, and what power I believe martial arts actually holds for the Parkinson's world. That's what I'm excited to talk about today. So thanks for having me on with that.
I think it's so important. I don't think there's enough awareness, and that's what we try to do together. Together, I feel our voices are so much stronger. I grew up in Brooklyn, as I mentioned, and I did Kyokushin kickboxing, which is more Israeli street fighting. And I didn't really want to do it, but growing up, I had no choice. And then I ended up in the world of law enforcement, so we did a lot of training. Today, I'm in reserve, so I don't go much anymore, and it's tough due to my own medical issues. But what I do also want to make people aware is for the Parkinson's community, caregivers, and outside, it's also so important for mental health. So that's where I'd like to start our little journey together. If you can kind of talk about, how important the world of, and to me, should be, well, it is an Olympic sport. And as you know, we have exciting news coming, I hope in the future. It might take a little while, but I just want the world to know that this area of martial arts really can help slow the progression of Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, I think Rocksteady boxing runs into the same issue as martial arts when you think of it. It's a contact sport almost, right? But you have to take it back to the bare essentials of that sport, which is what Rocksteady does for us in the non-contact version. And martial arts is much the same, in that there's so much within martial arts that is non-contact, and that's what we're talking about, of course.
Yeah.
And when you're saying emotional well-being or that how it can improve the way that you feel, you've got to take into account that it's a holistic practice. We're not just exercising like, say, riding a bike, but we're working the mind and the body at once. So it's a very, like I said before, beautiful practice. We call it a martial art, but it's also an art form. So it takes in that imagery, that mental imagery part of the world that a lot of other exercise venues don't quite tap into. And there's a lot more to it, but I'm glad that you started on the benefits of mental health, because that's really that's what had me stuck was the apathy, the depression. Being a young man with this disease can play a horrible trick on your mind, make you think that just because you've been assigned this label, that's me now, and I have to be this Mr. Parkinson's, and it can drag you out of whatever state it was that you were in before, whatever provider state you were in. As a man, that's a very important place to be. So martial arts actually gave that back to me. Like I said, for many years I was in a state of apathy, doing nothing for myself. But martial arts was that first step to say, like, okay, well, I can at least do that. And then their curiosity came. I said, what else can I do? And about that same time, I have to throw out Allie Topperwein. I believe I'm saying her last name correctly. I hope I am. She was doing some amazing things with American Ninja Warrior, and then Jimmy Choi came right after her about the same time. I'm not sure the sequence, but I saw her first and then Jimmy Choi. But both of them were doing amazing things as I was just really getting started with martial arts, and they caused a fire really to burn in me. Like, yeah, you can do more, Nate. And martial arts in itself, in the way that you progress, you start as a white belt, right? And the more dirty your belt gets, the more experience you get, it starts to darken and then eventually becomes black, is what the tradition is. In the same way, you're kind of building that upon your confidence and your self-esteem, whereas Parkinson's has ripped that away from you. So in that way, well, to circle back to your original question on this one, for mental health, it's huge. It's huge.
Yeah, we've been had the honor to have Allie on the show. I love her and her husband. They're heroes too, and their journey was incredible. And ironically, my two sons, they're about 7 and 11. They just came back from karate class, and I think it's so important for everyone. It's tougher when you're little, and like you said, it's funny seeing little kids in combat gear, and some of them don't like that part. But I think obviously we're concentrating more on the awareness for Parkinson, but I also always want to include the caregiver because you need a mental break too. I know I'd failed many times, not as a caregiver, but taking care of my own health. And even today, as an advocate, as you know, I'll have a
Yeah.
surgery, and right after I wake up from anesthesia, I'm fighting for a Parkinson's cure. But I do that because I don't think we have time, or I don't have time to rest. I don't want anyone out there to ever feel alone like I did and my mother did, or battle this alone. So that's why I'm so grateful for you to bring such an important topic to the table and the conversation.
Yeah, and on that topic of not going at it alone, that I came to today right after a martial arts tournament that I was at judging, and the beautiful thing about it is the community. If you've ever been to a tournament, you understand that yeah, there's sparring involved and there's a lot of board breaking, people are yelling and screaming, but the community behind it and how much they push each other. And some of those folks are out there with a variety of different disabilities. Myself with Parkinson's, I'm among so many other people who there might be somebody else with Parkinson's, there might be somebody who has Down syndrome, there may be somebody performing a kata in a wheelchair. And everybody is just supporting each other, and it's mixed right in there with, like you said, your 7 and did you say 8-year-old?
7 and then 11. After you have three, forget everyone did. And
So just average kids as well, and average adults, and everybody mixed in between, but it's all community. It's a great snapshot of your everyday community, but in the most supportive way that you could possibly see it. And it's very similar to what we have in a lot of the support groups for Parkinson's, but more broad and including a different age range and a variety of different ability ranges. So in that aspect, I think that it touches on a different part of the support for Parkinson's that maybe other ventures don't, and that it normalizes my Parkinson's. Anytime I'm around my martial arts community, I don't have Parkinson's and they don't see me as somebody as Parkinson's. And if something happens, they don't mention it, don't look at it funny. The cool thing is they've seen me struggle through so much, through all of the classes that we do together. And that's one of the beautiful things is I struggle in a lot of ways through classes that other folks don't, but I excel in many ways as well. So we get to have this yin and yang to observing each other, to where they have a lot of respect for the abilities that I do bring. And yeah, the community with martial arts it's a if you've never been a part of a martial arts community, you don't quite understand what I'm talking about. But once you're in it, you kind of it's kind of churchy if you're a person of a faith and you go on a particular day of the week, that same type of feeling you get a similar feeling within martial arts, but it's with an exercise twist to
yeah, I'm going to share now a few things so you might recognize this young man.
it.
But I do want to say how important it is to let individuals in the Parkinson's community and around the world know that this form of sport can help with progression. I find it rare, unfortunately, and I could be wrong, but at least with all my research in the 4 or 5 years I've been an advocate, obviously, I always think of you first, which is means you're the icon of this for the Parkinson's community and martial arts. But I think we need, more awareness. That's why I love teaming up, and I can't believe how time fastly goes by because we met probably August, last year, so it's already been a year. But I want to thank you again for the interview, and everyone, if you go to TogetherForSharon.com, click on interviews, and then you can find Nathan. You can find a lot more about him, his background, how to reach out to him. Everything again is completely free for that purpose. Then I want to get to something even more important, which is your website, and rallycapfitness.com. Maybe you can touch a little bit about, what you're doing now, some of the future. I know it looks bright because we're all family in this fight. So maybe you could touch on this for us.
Yeah, thank you. So Rally Cap Fitness, that's my 9 to 5, I would say. And then the Motivation Martial Arts Academy, or Motivation Academy of Martial Arts, I should say it right. That is my nighttime venture, which Rally Cap Fitness is just how I use corrective exercise, which I'm a corrective exercise specialist myself, to help the Parkinson's community. I utilize a lot of corrective techniques. It's kind of a tenet of martial arts itself, in that you have to correct a lot of your inefficient movements in order to actually improve as a martial artist. So it's a really easy transition for myself as a martial arts instructor to take corrective exercise and apply it to the Parkinson's world with a little bit of a martial arts twist. And that's where Rally Cap Fitness comes in, where I do one-on-one training with folks from the Parkinson's community. And that's virtual training, just like you and I are having this conversation here. And then Motivation Academy of Martial Arts is how I'm affecting the world of Parkinson's, specifically utilizing martial arts. And it's actually a virtual academy of martial arts currently that anybody can join. But right now we have 3 folks with Parkinson's who are a part of it. One person who is actually a Parkinson's trainer, and the other 24 are actually students from Uganda, which we can talk a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, we can touch on it. Gavin was on the show. He's incredible. And all the team and all the organizations have been so supportive
You
too.
talk about growth. That's
Yeah.
one thing that I'm happy to see growing is awareness for Uganda.
Yeah, that's amazing. Mr. Hannington has been on the show trying to get, everyone keeps calling me, we're the same, but he does this in there in Africa.
Yeah,
We do it here in the US. But I always say again, we have to be a team in this. As I try to reach people who do not have Parkinson's, and also people who are not aware. Because I think if we get everyone on board, we'll be closer to a cure. So
absolutely.
this happened to be great timing. I love the visuals while you're talking. Yeah,
Yeah.
almost seems like we
So
planned it, but we didn't.
you pulled up motivation, motivationusa.com, guys. If you can go to that and click right on Project Uganda, that rolls into the next conversation. We're talking about Hannington. So the 24 students that are part of the Motivation Academy Martial Arts are from Uganda. And if you can go through this page, guys, you'll learn a little bit more about Hannington, his mother, and why specifically motivation was drawn to Uganda, which Motivation is Darby Schlosser's organization, who was my mentor just starting out as a trainer. And I've been under her wing for the past 3 years or more, learning Parkinson specific exercise. And she's taking that now to the village healthcare workers that Gavin more than likely talked about, and giving them Parkinson specific training. While I myself am reaching out to the youth in Uganda at St. Cyprian in just outside of Makono. And they have, like I said, 24 students there who have been training under me for the better part of 6 months and just recently tested to their yellow belt.
Yeah.
Um,
I was trying to see if we
You're
wanted
good.
to see if we could.
It's too exciting, Sharon. You can't, or sorry,
There's no
apology.
mute. I like to play with the mute, but there's no mute. So
This is where your editing will come in.
yeah, we don't use editing on purpose.
It's all right.
Yeah, but
Hey,
it's
it's
yeah,
better off when it's nice and just like we are live and in person. I
yeah.
think people appreciate that more. Even though I called you Sharon, I'm sorry about that, George.
And anything that compares you to my mom, I'm proud
Hey,
of.
man, good, good.
But yeah, this is everyone. Please go. I wanted to play it, but I don't have a mute because I like to watch it while we talk. But there's so many incredible things here that you're doing. please again go to motorbationusa.com. I also wanted to share some other great areas, and I guess you were also helping out a little with the Parkinson's community in Los Angeles. I don't know if you can talk about that, and
So
you're
yeah, yeah,
also available on Facebook.
they had me on just to do a talk, kind of like what we're doing, to talk a little bit about martial arts and what I specifically do for the Parkinson's community as a member of the community and professionally now. And it was a cool opportunity to discuss those things with those guys. Hopefully, I can get back and circle back to them before too long. That's why it took me so long to get with you, is I've been doing a lot of these talks, but I train folks. I've taken a little bit of a hiatus over the past week because I've needed it. But I like you, every second that I can work with somebody within the Parkinson's community, it gives me that little bit of dopamine that I need. You don't have Parkinson's yourself, I believe, George. But
Yeah, not
you
yet.
need that dopamine rush just the same as any other human being, right?
Yeah, that'll help my spine, I hope. But I have other, I have a whole book and show for some for back issues.
Right.
We
We've
won't.
all got our own struggles. That's one thing. Once you go through something, you with your spine, us with Parkinson's, you understand that struggle is struggle. And you start to have a little bit more empathy for the rest of the world.
Yeah, so please, everyone listening, go to these websites you'll see here and there again, link from Together for Sharon. I'll add it also in the show notes. I'm going to hopefully try to. Some of the other areas I wanted to kind of get to is how do you think we can really gain more awareness for specifically the sport of martial arts and progression? I do think that unfortunately the media didn't help a lot with karate. I know they make some beautiful movies, but seeing Steven Seagal, my favorites, Jean-Claude Van Damme when I was growing up kind of didn't really call for people to want to pick up because they think they're going to beat you up. So how do
Yeah.
we get rid of
Well,
and bring in the reality that this could
I
help?
I think that if we take it back to what martial arts is at its base, when we're talking about the empires of Asia, right? And they had to draw out farmers from fields and all of a sudden teach them to be warriors. Well, they came up with systems to do that. And when you're trying to teach a farmer how to be a warrior, you have to retrain their movement. Well, it just so happens that that's what folks with Parkinson's need as well, is that we need our movement retrained before a lot of times we really go off into these other exercise ventures, which a lot of times your doctor will prescribe physical therapy, and that's that retraining that you're more likely going to go through. Or there's other specialized programs like what motivation offers. But the key is with martial arts, you're engaged in it as soon as you're a white belt. You are starting to reform your movement by the system. And that's the key of I was focusing on, is there's a system behind it that these empires put in place. We can discuss the dynasties and all that started martial arts and argue about it for ages, but it happened, right? And it was to better the movement of people who didn't already move well. And that's the basis of martial arts. And when you think of it in that on those terms, you can understand, okay, well, there has to be something in there. And well, they've been practicing this now for thousands of years. So it's a very well refined system, more so than anything out there for Parkinson's or for any other exercise venue, in my opinion. When you look at the science behind exercise, behind movement, you can take tenets of martial arts and explain it just the same. So, in my opinion, science is behind where martial arts has been all along. And that's one of the beautiful things, is that it's building a belief in yourself through retraining your movement. And in doing that, you build confidence. You overcome these self-imposed limitations that aren't necessarily a Parkinson's thing. Sometimes we have exacerbating situations that make our Parkinson's symptoms worse, stressors, anxieties, disbelief in ourselves. So all these things are things that you work on every class as you're going through these martial arts classes. But we should really break it down and say what is it that they did in those imperial times to retrain the farmers, right? And I believe that within martial arts, the most beautiful thing is kata, or forms. It's kata in Japanese. We call it hyung in my martial art, which is Tang Sudo. It's a Korean martial art. But in all the arts, it's very similar in that you're breaking your movement down into very basic steps that are memorized. And then you break those basic steps down and retrain yourself to do them in a more precise way and a more flowing way, a way that has more power, more balance, more snap. And in breaking down every little teeny tiny aspect of your movement and then building that up from that small foundation back up, you're working on that neuroplastic part of the brain that says, okay, my old patterns didn't work. Here we are. Let's build new neural pathways that can really take me forward within this Parkinson's journey and serve me better. And the cool thing is once you start to retrain yourself in that way, it opens up a whole new world that says, once that starts to fail, I get to retrain myself again. And it's almost like when they did martial arts and they had this belt system and they went up to black belt, they knew that that was a part of the human experience, that we had to continue our learning or else we would degrade. Um, and that's why at black belt that your journey doesn't end. That's really the start of your learning. And once you become a black belt, you are expected to be a lifelong learner in martial arts. And in that, we have folks within our system, and I know other systems have folks with even more longevity who are upwards of 90 to 100 years old still practicing this art. Now it looks different, and they've had to modify things, and it's just the act of getting out there and doing it and being a part of the community still that really keeps them young at heart and the body still moving. Um, Seeing it now in folks with Parkinson's is a magical thing because I experienced it myself. And like you said, we've been on this journey together now for a while. And it's taken a while for my own ability to articulate what I've been through, this experience, and how I've started to overcome some of these limitations, like I said, that maybe were self-imposed and not necessarily the actual underlying Parkinson's that Nate was dealing with. Martial arts gave me that ability to become self-aware. And I think that's really the key. In every exercise venue, you want to become more self-aware. You want to reconnect the brain, the body. Martial arts does that. That's the key behind it all.
Yeah, well, I hope someday we'll be zooming into one of your live events and show some of this to everyone because I love speaking, but I think seeing it would be beautiful too. So maybe it's something we could plan. Also, I love how the support of the Parkinson's community is, whether it's the social media, Facebook group, Fight Club, and all the different
Yeah.
organizations out there. It's great to see everyone together and in this really chill, we find a cure. I wanted to shift a little now to a little bit more about Nathan, if that's okay.
Hey, no problem.
Can you list three words that describe who you are?
That aren't martial arts related. Got you. Three words that describe who Nathan is. Whew. Relentless, determined, and empathetic. I would say those are three things that define who I am, definitely.
And what is one moment or most memorable moment that stands out through most of your work with awareness that you could share?
Ooh, Russ, sitting in Oaxaca, Mexico with Russ Parker, and watching him kind of dance in the street while I played guitar with the locals there. That was a beautiful moment just to see his own symptoms kind of release. And Gavin was with us on that trip, a few others, but watching Gavin do his magic and overcoming his symptoms through love and joy and these things that are intricate parts of martial arts. That's where it's so interconnected what we all do well for ourselves. That's why I love these venues that you just mentioned, because it brings in that aspect of how much variety there can be to how we treat our Parkinson's.
No, it's amazing. And this one's important to me. Of course, they all are, but who helps you during times of struggle? I try to bring the people behind the scenes. Obviously, you're kind of the spokesperson, but wanted to send our love and support to everyone out there and your family. And maybe you could talk about, who's there to support you. Plus, I was a caregiver. What tips could you give those caregivers who might be listening?
Definitely. I gotta give a shout out to my wife. She's we've had our hard times with Parkinson's too, and I could go and do an entire conversation on that. But through thick and thin, she's actually stuck by me, and I have to give a shout out to her. My dad has been a really strong supporter of me, and my brothers. Beyond that, I have to give a shout out, like I said, to my mentor, Darby Schlosser. Without her, I wouldn't have the ability to articulate these things about the experience I've been through, and be able to speak on them with a little bit of authority and say, this is my experience. So I have to give a shout out to her. Her giving me this gift is the only way that I'd be able to give back to the community in the way that I have. Um, and there was a second part to your question, I think, wasn't there?
For caregivers, I was a caregiver. If someone listening is a caregiver right now, what kind of advice would you give them?
Okay. Advice for a caregiver is understand how to listen. That's the biggest thing. And understand that a part of that is how to listen to folks with Parkinson's, because we're going through so much change that what we say one day may not be the same as the next day. And you may have to sit there and listen to it and say, uh-huh, and then figure out a way through things. This is challenging, but your listening skills are literally going to become the most important thing for your relationship, for your own understanding. You could probably speak on that way better than me, George, but just in the folks that I've worked with, I work with a lot of folks who bring their caregiver into the sessions to be a part of the experience. And we have to work on that sometimes, where sometimes the caregiver wants to jump in and give direction a little bit more, where we want the person with Parkinson's to be able to lead themselves again, right? If they've lost that ability, or continue to build on that ability if they've still got it. But we want to make sure that we're listening and not taking away that role from the person with Parkinson's. Once you find yourself in this position, that it's hard to take anybody's advice, because nobody understands exactly what the caregiver is going through either. As much of a boutique disease this is for a person with Parkinson's, it is equally a boutique disease for that caregiver. So there's no exact advice that we can give anybody. Is the kind of how do I want to describe this? That thorn in the side of Parkinson's is that nobody can ever give you the exact advice to do. And that's where the listening comes in. You have to have that empathetic ear to just sit back and think about things before you ever act. Whereas us folks with Parkinson's start to lose a little bit of that ability, and we have to rely on our care partner to have that a little bit more.
I appreciate it. And we send again our love to everyone in your family and community for their support. Who's your hero and inspiration?
Hero and inspiration. Oh man, we mentioned Hannington, and I have to throw it back to him for my hero and inspiration. We're talking about a gentleman who is from a family who was of poor means. His mom had a disease that she didn't understand, they didn't understand, and culturally it wasn't acceptable for her to stay in the home. And he went through a horrible experience. But in going through that, learned so much about our disease and how his community needs to change in order to not have what his mom went through again. He is a hero to his community. He's a hero to me, and he's going to go down as one of the biggest advocates for Parkinson's disease there ever was, right next to you, my friend. But I'm going to make sure that Hannington's my hero, and he deserves all the praise and all the attention that we can give him.
I'm a fan of his and yours, and I appreciate the honesty. This is a fun one. If you were asked to write a script to a movie about your life story, what would you call it? I know karate has to be involved, some martial.
Oh man.
But we don't tell you the questions before on purpose.
No, no, no. This is an interesting one. Uh, you better duck.
I like that. And then final question, plus if you could also share again how everyone can reach you. I know Motivation is one website, but if you could leave the Parkinson's community today with some words of encouragement, what would they be?
Hey, everything's okay. That's the thing that I'm trying to instill back in my own life. Every once in a while, you go through cycles with this disease where you start to get down on yourself. I mentioned I've taken a week off recently because I'm in the midst of one of those cycles. But I've been telling myself everything's okay. Everything's within your control. This disease takes that control right out of your hands, like I said at the beginning of this talk, but you can regain it. Martial arts, like we said, is one of those venues, but there's way, way too many others for us to talk about right now.
Yeah, I mean, we have so much more. I was maybe one last one also is, what did you notice with symptoms wise from before you had martial arts in your life to today?
Definitely the fascinations and the freezes of the falling. That's one thing that if I trip over something or if I'm not raising my foot now, I have a venue. I go and I train it now. I go to these mats behind me and I work on my forms and I get better at it. So that's one for sure is just definitely overcoming that fascination and the eventual fall forms for from karate is has definitely retrained my brain and my body on that.
Well, I really appreciate your time, honesty, and friendship today. I always say this can't end today. It has to continue the conversation until we find a cure. Just want to thank you and everyone listening. I don't know if you had any other areas you wanted to touch on, or did we cover most?
No, what's your next venture of advocacy?
Actually, for me, again, this is all about you, but this is the Nathan show today, and we also dedicate it to all those you're training with and supporting and means the world. I'll be publishing, I hope next year, a big book on policing and Parkinson's disease. So
Ooh,
trying to break the walls down in the world of law enforcement throughout the United States for awareness right now. There's actually, in my opinion, I don't want to tell too much the secrets, but a lot of the academies throughout the United States list dementia and Alzheimer's and do not include even the word Parkinson disease. And my dream, if I could leave the planet with one last thing, would be to have every police academy throughout the United States add just the word Parkinson disease into the academy training manual. So that's something I'll need your help and everyone throughout the world. We'll need that book just to have it and open the conversation. But somehow we have to get that book to every academy in the country, which is probably something I won't be able to do. But these things live beyond us. I'd rather have a cure tomorrow, obviously.
yeah,
So then that's a very important issue, so that's something, but that entails too martial arts. Obviously, we have something planned in the future. I hope it's going to be big. I don't see anything like it out there. And it's really just shedding a light on how powerful sports are, but not just the word sports, every single sport. I really want
yeah.
to bring that together, but have the Parkinson's community and writers like yourself involved, shedding important light on things like martial arts and
Yeah,
basketball.
I'll cap it off with this. But since you said that sports, I think what we need to form as people with Parkinson's is an athletic mindset. Whatever it is, whatever endeavor you have an athletic mindset where you're trying to improve yourself, your motor function, your ability, everything, your cognition, right along the line. So yeah, great talk. Thanks,
I
George.
love that. And I have one last message for you and everyone listening. We love you. We support you. We care a lot about you, and you're never alone. I, along with Nathan, will advocate for you. And I feel together our voices are so much stronger. And I always say I'm just getting started, even though I'm not, because when we met or I discovered your, journey, it just kind of inspired me. And there are tough days, like you said, even for everyone. But when I see you fighting and out there and either struggling or happy or sad, all the emotions, it kind of makes me, no matter where I am, kind of drop everything and get right back to advocating for a cure for you and everybody. And again, no one's ever alone in this fight. So I'm so grateful for your time today.
We appreciate you, George. Thank you.
Thanks. And thanks everyone for listening. It's been another episode of Q&A with Sharon's son, George. Please share this. Please support Nathan, all he does. Remember, conversation cannot end, and I won't allow it to as long as I can breathe and live still and until we find a cure, until it's on all your doorsteps and mine too. So thanks everyone for listening. We send our love, support, and we'll be back very soon. Thanks.